So this is not the first time we've heard of this, and it's just resurfacing today. We all knew that the Eagles were really, really, really interested in Russell Wilson. And Howie Roseman, it's kind of funny. Sometimes the deals you don't make end up being your best deals, and that's what transpired here. The Eagles not making that Russell Wilson trade, or Russell Wilson telling the Eagles, I'm good, thanks but no thanks. Look how much better off the Eagles are now. Now they have a young franchise quarterback who, just as the kids would say, got the bag. Remember, they didn't have A.J. Brown at the time when they were talking to Seattle potentially for Russell Wilson. They would not have got A.J. Brown if they ended up getting Russell Wilson because they had to use those first-round picks. Remember, they traded a first-round pick for A.J. Brown, and the Tennessee Titans ended up taking Treylon Burks. So that deal where the Eagles, they clearly wanted to make it, right? They were exploring Deshaun Watson. Howie Roseman hired a private investigator, I think was one of those reports. And then they were clearly interested in Russell Wilson. At the time, if the Eagles would have done that, I think everyone would have said, yeah, good job by the Eagles. You get Russell Wilson. Yeah, good job by the Eagles, even though that was a more controversial situation with what was going on off the field. You get Deshaun Watson, but you would see why they would make that move. So the Eagles themselves even questioned Jalen Hurts. But here's what I like. Once they knew that neither of those deals were going to get done, whether they didn't want to do the Wentz deal or Russell Wilson didn't want to do the deal to Philadelphia, they went all in on Jalen Hurts. Because how many times do you see a young quarterback fail and he fails and he leaves you desiring more? Where you go, man, if they would have gotten this wide receiver, or if they would have gotten this offensive line. The Eagles are the best offensive line in football, the preeminent offensive line in the NFL. And once they didn't get Russell Wilson, once they didn't get Deshaun Watson and replace that quarterback in Jalen Hurts, they said, Jalen Hurts, we're going to have you prove this year that you're the guy. They were skeptical. They can't say that they were all in on Jalen Hurts when they were interested in Deshaun Watson. Reportedly, they basically had a deal done for Russell Wilson, but Russ said, I'm not going there. And what they did off of that was they already had Devontae Smith a year there, who I loved at Alabama. Then they go on out there, they get A.J. Brown. They have the best offensive line in football. Dallas Goedert is one of the more underrated tight ends in the NFL. And you look at that team, that was a team that ended up going to a Super Bowl last year, and they didn't really lose many games a year ago. And now when you enter this season, we're looking at Philadelphia coming off a Super Bowl berth where for a decent amount of the Super Bowl, they played better than Kansas City, where now you look at Philly saying, in the NFC, it's Philadelphia and pretty much everybody else. Now, I'll throw the 49ers in there towards the top. The 49ers are the second best team in football, in the NFC, I should say. But until the 49ers give us some clarity on their quarterback position, I don't care how great their roster does appear. You can't tell me that the 49ers right now are the favorites over the Eagles because we don't know who's going to be playing quarterback for the 49ers. It could be Brock Purdy. Then it could be Sam Darnold. Then it could be Trey Lance. And maybe all the above. So that deal that Howie Roseman got told no on by Russell Wilson, look how many different stories come from that. Like if Russell Wilson went to Philadelphia, I think it's a better landing spot than if he would have gone to Denver, even without having A.J. Brown there. I trust the Eagles organization more than I do the Denver Broncos. But off of that, you have Jalen Hurts not only becoming a good quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in football, and a star in this league. You have A.J. Brown going to Philadelphia, Philadelphia going to a Super Bowl. And I just have to ask this question, and I'll throw it out there to you guys, EJ and Samter. Do you think Russell Wilson has regret about his decision to go to Denver? Because I'll also add this. The Commanders were also reportedly interested. That's been out there before. And Russell Wilson said he wouldn't go to the Commanders. Now, I can understand why. Now it looks different because Josh Harris is going to be the owner of the Washington Commanders, but you have that just terrible human being in Daniel Snyder running that organization right into the ground. It's an absolute disgrace what the Commanders have become. But you look at the Commanders situation just in terms of the roster. you could argue that the Commanders have a better roster than Denver. Like, Denver's defense is awesome. The Commanders on paper have a really good defense as well. Chase Young needs to reach his potential, but look at the offensive side of the ball. Jerry Jeudy, to me, is overrated. I like Patrick and Sutton, but they got to be healthy. Javonte Williams, I think, could have a promising career, but he already has dealt with injuries. You look at the Commanders, and we don't know who they would have been able to draft. Maybe they don't have Jahan Dotson, which is fair. But right now, the Commanders have Terry McLaurin, who is a stud at the wide receiving position, better than Jerry Jeudy. You have now Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, who's phenomenal. And, oh, yeah, by the way, I like Brian Robinson Jr. I look at the Commanders as a team. If it wasn't for Dan Snyder, and maybe this is going to change in the next few years, whenever that goes through, I do think the Commanders can become a destination because they've been looking for a quarterback for a while. I know Ron Rivera keeps on going back and forth. You got to get the quarterback, and then it's, oh, we're finally building the roster. He has built this roster. This roster is a solid roster, and they just need a quarterback. So I'll ask you guys this. After how much of a disaster it was for Russell Wilson in year one, now Sean Payton's there. I wonder how much regret Russell Wilson has just on the surface, if we want to just make it this simple, that there was a deal on the table for him to go to Philadelphia, and he said thanks, but no thanks.
I think it's too early for him to have regret yet. I think if you look at like you talked about, you looked at the division, it never made sense to begin with, but there was a reason why he wanted to go to Denver over everybody else. He knew what that division was before he got there. So I don't see that as being part of the regret. The regret might just be because no one knew how good the Eagles were really going to be. But I still think that the Broncos roster looks good. And if Russell Wilson can become what he was in the past, there's no reason to say that they can't be one of the better teams in the AFC. We talk about like the top tier of the AFC and then that second tier. The Broncos could be in that second tier if Wilson gets back to being Russell Wilson. So I'm not sure he's ready to say regret yet. The regret might just be that he made a bad decision to begin with that division. But I still think that Russell Wilson could be Russell Wilson.
The conference.
Yes.
Like, look at the AFC compared to the NFC. You have Mahomes. You have Burrow. You have Josh Allen. Right now, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert. You could go on and on and on with these quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson as well. It's loaded. In the NFC, the best quarterback is Jalen Hurts. And then it's like, can Matthew Stafford stay healthy? Dak is a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Kirk Cousins, a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. What is eventually Bryce Young going to be? Because he is a number one overall pick. Kyler Murray is probably going to get traded sooner rather than later, like a year from now, because they're probably going to have the number one overall pick. They also have that Texans pick in the draft, and maybe they go take Caleb Williams. Like, you look around the NFC, like, we're talking about Jared Goff being one of the better quarterbacks in the NFC, and that's not like crazy to say, but it sounds crazy to say. So that's, to me, where if you could have gone to the NFC for Russell Wilson, that would have been much better than going into just this craziness of the AFC.
And to me, I think it started, the first issue was, I think that not just Russell Wilson, I think a lot of us overrated a lot of the guys on the Broncos. There was this thought that the Broncos were this high-powered offense that had weapons all over the place, and all they needed was a quarterback to deliver these guys the ball, and they would be averaging 30 points a game.
Seattle has a better offense than Denver. I said that at the time of the trade. They have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Right. He wasn't even going to a better supporting cast than what he was leaving. So I think that was the original sin. And then the second one was not comparing what you had in Denver compared to who you're going to be battling in that AFC. So, yeah, I think he had a massive he should have massive regret. And you look at what the Eagles put together, the offensive line they had, they already had a lot of those pass rushers. Like, the Eagles were gumming. Like, I don't know. I thought they were going to go to Super Bowl this year. I did pick them to go to Super Bowl this year. Like, I don't think it was seeing the forest through the trees to think that the Eagles couldn't turn it around very quickly.